What's up, guys? Max here, back with a brand new episode of the ScuttleButt Show. And as you can see, I'm joined by my two very special friends and guests today. The Matchbox 20 episode, we got Rob and Thomas. How's it going, guys? How are you doing?
What's up, Max?
What's up, Thomas?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We see you in scrubs because you just got out of work and you made it back in time to join us today. So I want to say thank you. And I know that the audience of the ScuttleButt Show gave you extremely high marks on the last episode. Everyone really enjoyed what you had to say, and I was immediately getting emails and Instagram messages saying to get you back on the show as soon as possible. So thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff.
Awesome. I want to say what's up to everybody in the chat really quick. We got Rob is monitoring the chat from Exist. So if you guys see him, you can ask him questions directly. Iron Lotus, Ed, Sam, Corporal, John, Harriet Lime Pie. We have got Nuggets in the house, JJ, Justin, Arkunkel. Welcome, everybody. We have all demographics here today, young to experienced and everything in between. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And the focus of today's episode is going to be about sleep and why it's so important when it comes to fitness and recovery and exercise and wellness in general. But really quick, let's just catch up with you guys. Rob, what's new over at Exist since the last time we talked?
Well, we're working on a sleep study right now. It's an academic study surrounding the rest node. We finally finished it, got it out in the hands of some folks. Now, what's interesting about this study is that it's all veterans. It's all veterans. Some of them are active duty. Some of them are retired. A lot of SEALs. There's some, we definitely have Marines, Army. I don't think any Air Force. Obviously, you know, their names are anonymous, but these veterans, which everybody on the channel here is veterans, I think everybody's welcome, right? But definitely about veterans. So this is really good for me because when I started this mission to help people with sleep, it was really to help my buddies in the SEAL teams. That was like 4 years ago. And we went on this whole journey with this and that, the sleep pod, the rest node, and now to come full circle back to helping out the veterans is just cool. It's cool. So that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. Is that the 62 Romeo that we were talking about before?
That's right. That's right. 62 Romeo.
Nice. So we are super excited to hear how that goes and then get the rest node rocking and out there. And if anybody wants to check out more, you can go to existtribe.com and check out the website, or existtribe.org, and check out what they have going on over there. And then Thomas, what's new with you?
Man, just surviving, pushing along. You know, I signed an MMA fighter recently.
Whoa.
So I'm in the combat sports now. That world's really interesting. Yeah, man, I'm working on 2 more combat fighters to sign up. So it's looking good.
That is super interesting, actually. You probably have a combination of dealing with repeated trauma and sleep and concussions and TBI and all that. So that obviously has a direct crossover with the military, a lot of combatives, a lot of TBI, all that kind of stuff. So that's a great crossover point there too.
Yeah, brain health is really important with combat fighters, boxers, whatever. So I really focus. I mean, I focus on everything, but I really, put a hot point on brain health.
Yeah, I think that's very important. You hear a lot about people, veterans, especially years after service is over, dealing with that head trauma as it kind of presents in migraines, headaches, insomnia.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I'm not the expert here. I'm sure a ton of mental health issues can be compounded by brain trauma. Is that probably true?
Oh, absolutely. And Robert really, he's the mad scientist behind that area. I actually got to learn from him when he did a presentation. He was talking about how, certain parts of the brain become damaged, due to TBI. And there's just a disconnect between, certain parts of the brain. And it was really cool learning that. I'm probably butchering it, but I got to learn a lot from him.
Nice. Rob, do you have anything about, really quick before we dive into sleep stuff, about rest and TBI and head injuries? Anybody out there who is practicing MMA or combat sports and what they should look out for?
Well, I just know that, like we have concussive TBIs and then we have blast TBIs, right? So the folks in the military, they're starting to understand, because you can do an fMRI of the brain but now they have to have this, diffusion imager technology to be able to, it's almost like time lapsing or time phasing the imagery to see, this damage from the blast, TBI. And so what they're calling it is astroglial scarring. And so it's this specific type of scarring, like in that white matter, where you see a tau protein buildup in the brain. And what we know about, sleep, and Thomas, you probably know this better than me, is that, part of the process of sleep at some point is for your brain to kind of relax and reduce in size and let that cerebrospinal fluid get in there and rinse away those toxins from the day, the buildup from the day, the tau proteins, the beta amyloids, all that stuff. So sleep and TBI, we haven't quite figured everything out yet. And I'm just speaking broadly to all the research that's going on with TBI right now. But basically, sleep is impacted after TBI. And so is, improving sleep a good remedy for TBI damages? The jury's still out. We'll see.
Got it. Well, it can't hurt though, probably, right?
I think it helps.
I'm sure, a good night's sleep helps with life in general. But speaking of a good night's sleep and things that it helps with, Thomas, I kind of wanted to open this up with my concept here is like exercise, fitness, recovery, sleep, all of that stuff goes together. But for me personally, let me ask you a question here and see if we're on the right track getting the conversation started, because I'm sure there's a lot to dive into. We only have, usually about an hour to talk about this stuff. So I want to make sure we can cover kind of a broad range on the topic in that time. But I wake up in the morning in one of two ways. Either life is impossible and the prospect of continuing on is just devastating to me. Or I wake up and I'm ready to put on my favorite music and just destroy everything in front of me, including getting to the gym right away, having a great workout. Why do I feel one of those two ways?
Well, it depends on which cycle or which stage of sleep you're coming out of. So when you wake up out of REM during your REM cycle, like you wake up easier, you're more refreshed, ready to take on the day. When you wake up in out of any of those other outside of stage one, when you wake up out of like stage 2 or 3, you're just more groggy and just kind of foggy and out of it. And that's just how it works. Because when you're dreaming, it's weird because the way I was trained, it's a deeper stage, but it's also kind of a light stage of sleep as well. You're kind of in between, and so it's easier to wake up during that cycle. So I don't know if you ever noticed, if you ever try to wake up a kid or another adult, and you wake them up, and it's really difficult to wake them up. But then when you do, they're just kind of like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on here? Well, they woke up either out of stage 2 or stage 3 sleep.
Okay. And is that something that I see a lot of these, fitness trackers, watches and stuff like that. Is that something that I can take control of somehow?
The jury's out on that one, because when you're sleeping, like, you really don't have any control over like how your body transitions into those different stages. It's just something that it knows to do. So your body goes through these different sleep cycles. And what I mean by sleep cycles is you go from wake to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 to REM, and then kind of back to stage 1, 2, 3, and then REM. And you do those every 90 minutes. Okay. So you really don't have any control on how you're doing it, or when your body transitions into those stages of sleep. It just does it automatically. It's just naturally programmed to do that. Now, I will say this: when you go into REM, our body goes through about 4 to 5 REM cycles a night. It's supposed to. So each one lasting longer than the previous. So if you usually people say, "Oh man, like I had a really really long dream," and they woke up. That's normally their last REM cycle. Okay, and so it's kind of, in my experience, and I say in my experience, because somebody might have a different one. Is you can't really control the different stages of sleep that your body transitions into. It just does it on its own.
Okay. And Rob, is this something that with something like this, the rest node, can start prepping my mind for waking up in the morning, maybe in a more improved state?
Yeah, that's what the rest node is aimed to do. But Max, don't you have an interesting schedule shift coming up that I heard about?
Yeah. So, okay, good question. So, I need to announce, I need to also prep the audience for this one too, which is next week. My wife and I are doing a 180 sleep shift. So we're going to be staying awake at night and sleeping during the day. I don't foresee any big changes with the show, but I might be different in how I present because I'll be coming off of the end of a long day instead of the beginning of one. Right now it's 10 in the morning out here, but it would be equivalent to being 11 p.m. next week. So yeah, I don't know, Thomas, what am I looking for? I'm going to be starting Monday. I'm going to be switching my sleep schedule to awake at night, asleep during the day, and only for 4 days. So what am I in store for?
If you don't mind me asking why.
Yeah, so good question. The reason why, I don't mind at all. The reason why is my wife is going to be attending a virtual conference on American time. So instead of me, staying up normal, we're both going to just switch and kind of get on the same schedule.
Okay, understood. So I worked third shift for 9.5 years. And so you're pretty much you're switching to a third shift schedule. And what you're doing is you're one thing that one of the doctors I used to work with, and I still work with them, but we always say it's never good to fool Mother Nature, and so pretty much that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be fooling Mother Nature into restructuring or revamping your circadian clock. That's really what you're doing. You're reversing it, and it's not going to feel good because your body we aren't designed to do that. So I'd say at about, I don't know, maybe between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning, we have this what's called a sleep drive. Okay. And this sleep drive, it eventually your body is kind of like, wait a minute, like what are we doing here? Like we're supposed to be asleep. And so it tries to do like a hard shutdown like a computer does, or like you can do with a computer. So it tries to do this hard shutdown, and then you just kind of hit this wall. And I'll a little story here. So like when I was working thirds doing sleep studies, between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning was like that was my wall, and I would hit it, and then like nothing was funny anymore. Like I didn't want to talk. Like I was just in this zone trying to stay awake when my body was trying to do a hard shutdown. And then eventually, after about 4 o'clock, your body's like, oh, okay, obviously you're not wanting to go to sleep, and then you get that second wind, and then you can go, for a certain amount of time, and then you just kind of pass out. So that's what you're going to be looking at. Just kind of pay attention to that as you're forcing yourself to stay awake. At a certain point, in that late morning, your body's going to try to do a hard shutdown, and you're going to feel it.
I bet. I've been there before, like working the mid check or the third shift, and you get that 2 to 4 in the morning, like you were saying, and it's just like your body is saying, I'm going to sleep. There's very little you can do. No caffeine's going to help. Nothing's really going to help. You're going to get tired. I usually get hungry too. Like I want a snack or something like that. Like I just want a cozy snack and a blanket around that time. Rob, you probably have experienced some of that in your Navy training.
Yeah, that's the hunger. That's the ghrelin and leptin issue. And people crave with sleep deprivation, fattier, more sugary foods. So they make those poor choices. And they've done studies on this stuff. Like they actually will sleep deprive people and then lay a buffet of like everything out. And they have cameras on and they watch like, what is this guy going to eat? And when they're sleep deprived, they always pick the crappy food. I think of it like, after a late night, everybody goes to Taco Bell or Jack in the Box. What do they have? Almost like the party box or something. Yeah,
they know what they're doing.
It's just out of control. They're like, oh man. Yeah, we've all been there. But I wonder, so what do you think, Thomas, about, we're talking about athletics, we're talking about sleep. So Max is going to jack up his sleep, which is something that I talk a lot about with, the 5 and dimes issue on the Navy ships and stuff like that. But so, Max is totally flipping his schedule up and down. And we know you like to work out, Max. We know you got that workout show that's coming out.
Yep.
So what is this going to do to his testosterone production, as well as, lactic acid process, his ability to recover, stuff like that?
Yeah, lay it on me.
So it's going to greatly impact it.
Oh God.
Because again, you're forcing your body to be awake at a time that it's not supposed to. And so when we sleep, okay, so we're talking athletics. And you work out, you're a workout warrior. So when you work out, so this is the biggest misconception. Like, I've talked to professional athletes about this, and it's surprising me because you would think that they have all these resources available to them, and you find out like no one's telling them these things. So when I'm talking to these people, whether it's their trainers, coaches, team doctors, the athletes themselves, their jaws drop because I started going through the process of, when you're working out, when you're competing, training, sparring, whatever you're doing, you're actually breaking down muscle fiber and tissue. You're causing trauma to it, tearing it apart, causing little micro tears. Okay, and the only time that those muscle fibers and tissues can fuse back together bigger, harder, and stronger is during sleep. Because, and this is why, prioritizing your sleep and maximizing it is important, because 75% or more of growth hormone, HGH, is secreted during stage 3 sleep. Okay. And quick point, this is why that's the stage of sleep that children spend the most time in, which is why it's important. Sleep is important for their mental and physical growth and development. But anyway, but as adults, we produce and release growth hormone. And so it's really, really important to prioritize and maximize your sleep, because when you're causing that trauma to your body, when you're breaking it down, it needs that time. It requires that time to repair itself. So I always tell athletes, we use and abuse our bodies more than the average person or non-athlete. Therefore, our body literally requires more recovery and rebuild and repair and regeneration time. And that's literally how we get stronger. So like, when you're lifting weights, and eventually that weight gets easier. Well, what's happening is that those muscle fibers and tissues, you're going to hear me use that term a lot. Again, they fuse back together bigger, harder, stronger. So then it's preparing itself for the trauma that you're going to cause it. So then what happens when you go to the next weight? You get sore all over again, because your body's like, oh shit, like I wasn't ready for this. You know what I mean? I was ready for what you were doing before. And so you start that process all over again. So prioritizing your sleep and recovery, making recovery part of your training, is really, really important.
I like the part where the heavier weights start to feel lighter. Like, that's my, like, as a goon, I'm wearing my Moons Out, Goons Out shirt, as like a self-proclaimed goon. I like, moving the heavier things more quickly. The part of this show that I like with you guys is I always seem to spot like compounding issues. And so we're going from, I'm going to switch my sleep schedule. It's going to mess me up, biologically, and it also is going to mess me up in a way where fatigued people tend to eat worse too. So if we're talking about athletics, if I'm sleeping worse, I'm going to eat worse, I'm going to recover worse, I'm going to exercise more poorly. So that compounds too, because my quality of exercise is worse, and my quality of recovery is worse, and my diet is worse. So if people are out there struggling to get fit, would you say, or maybe they're like, man, this used to be easier or something like that, it sounds like a good place to start would be going, are you sleeping correctly? Are you resting properly? Because that could be a huge part of the reason why you're having these issues.
Yeah, and that question always comes up in clinic. So like when we see, I can't tell you how many patients I've seen where they're like, man, like, I changed my diet, like I'm doing this, I'm doing all the right things, this. Okay, well, how you sleeping? And there's kind of like, well, I'm up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, well, then with that being said, then I'll ask, okay, well, then how are you eating? Like, so yeah, you have a good diet, but what are you doing in between that time? I like chips, or I like doing this, or I like doing that. And it just goes back to what Rob said with the leptin and ghrelin. And I have this conversation with the patients. There's a hormone that tells you when it's time to eat, makes you hungry. There's a hormone that tells you when you need to stop. Okay. And so what happens is when you're sleep deprived, the hormone that tells you when to stop eating gets suppressed. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, the hormone that tells you that you need to eat is increased. And then the one that tells you that, that you're full, that one gets suppressed. And so now you're craving, like Rob said, these higher calorie, fattier foods, and so you're pretty much undoing the work that you did with the diet and with the exercise, and so then when we account for the sleep deprivation or the bad sleep schedule, or even sleep apnea, which is a form of sleep deprivation, next thing you know, they're like, oh, we see them in 2 or 3 months. And they're like, oh man, like, the weight just flew off, because now you're more aware of what you're eating, you're more aware of what you're doing. Also, too, injury prevention. So like when your body is not healing properly, you increase the incidence of injury. And so that's also what I do with my clients as well, is help them decrease injury, because now, again, with your brain being able to flush out those toxins and byproducts that get built up throughout the day, because people don't realize that structural damage actually happens in our brains when we use them. It's happening right now, as I'm delivering information, as you're digesting it. We have to use our brains to do everything. And so when we're doing that, we're causing damage. And so when we sleep, like Rob said, our brain cells actually shrink. And this has been shown on, in brain imaging, that pulses of cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF for short, comes in, rinses out that gunk, and so now the next day we're more mentally aware, we're more mentally, focused, more mentally energized. And so with athletes, they're more aware of how they're landing, where they're stepping, how they're moving, all these different things, which decreases injury. So I kind of like made that two parts, but.
No, that's great. It makes a lot of sense. I feel like that kind of, if you talk about it like a brain, brain not clearing out the, toxins, or not helping your body clear out the toxins, and, your brain not processing that correctly and your body's producing the wrong results. It's interesting too, because, and back to diet and fatigue, I also, when I was saying sometimes I wake up and I feel like, ready to go. I feel like I just snorted a line of Jack 3D or something like that. And other days, and other days I'm beat down, But it's funny too, because another thing about that is the days that I wake up feeling beat down, like I don't have the strength to go to the gym, and then you have to psychologically just, the mental toughness part where you have to go anyway, which I've never regretted ever in my life. But those mornings also, instead of waking up wanting to move, I wake up wanting to eat. Like I also want to have like a bowl of cereal or something like that, or, pancakes or whatever. Instead of going to the gym, I'm like, man, it just sounds so much better to eat breakfast instead of go exercise, as opposed to when I wake up rested, or, from the right part of my sleep cycle. And I'm like, let's go running. And then while we're running, we're going to do gymnastics, and I don't even know how, but I just believe in myself at that moment. It's just like so different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why it's so important. Another thing with diet as well, protein intake, that's really important. All my athletes, I have them doing a protein shake 1 hour before bed. Why? Is because at the end of the day, after they do all their practicing and working out, their protein stores are depleted. And so what our body does is our bodies break down proteins into amino acids. So our bodies don't naturally produce that, so we feed it that through protein. And so when our body breaks down those amino acids work in conjunction with the growth hormone to help, in the repair process. So there's a lot of different things that even the pro athletes aren't doing in conjunction with their training, in conjunction with their recovery. That's gonna better help them. So, for example, I have a girl. Her name is Isis Thorpe. She's a WNBA free agent, and she was all over the place sleep-wise. And so I got her on a consistent schedule. Same bedtime, same wake up time. And I guess in a way you can kind of control your sleep cycles that way, because your body needs to know when it needs to start the process of waking you up. But when you're on like a roller coaster of like bedtime, wake up time, your body's kind of like, man, like I don't know when I need to start, releasing cortisol. I don't know when I need to start, replenishing your oxygen and your nutrients that you use throughout the day. That also happens in sleep, and so the protein intake really, really helps. Anyway, I started that regimen with her, and she was no longer waking up sore, after a workout or after a game, and so, I had a lot of athletes that responded that way. Oh man, I'm not really sore anymore. Yeah, because you're replenishing that protein store, and your body's able to, oh, okay, here's some protein, break it down to amino acids. Oh, here you go, HGH, work with them, and then your body's able to rebuild and regenerate better. So it's all about conditioning your body and your environment, to be able to repair properly.
Rob, I could keep going here, but I want to give you a chance. I want to make sure I'm not stepping on your toes here. If there's something you got to add here.
No. Thomas is a real expert as he coaches athletes across the board. I'm just curious, though. I really kind of want to run a study with you, Max, just a single person study. Maybe you can pick out like a CrossFit WOD or like whatever your favorite workout is, and see how your times or weights fluctuate as you transition through this 180 sleep change. I'm kind of curious to see if if things get worse or if you're able to maintain it for that period of time. I'm curious.
Okay. Now let me put something together, and I was going to go back to the gym this afternoon. I did my morning workout, but I was thinking about going back this afternoon to shoot some of the videos for the workout series, and because it was raining this morning, I'm hoping it clears up by this afternoon. So yeah, I could figure something out like that for sure.
Are we going to place bets, or?
I'll leave that up to the chat. Let me post on Instagram or something what I'm going to do.
Okay.
And we'll get an over under on it. Thomas, talking about, body breaking down proteins, Justin in the chat asked about delayed onset muscle soreness, if that affects sleep. And you kind of touched on it there. I feel like we started to get an answer there. Maybe there's more you want to add based on bringing up Dom specifically, but also, talking about that, is there, maybe this is too many questions at once, but is there something that happens when you go to sleep sore, in regards to like your body being able to relax enough to get sleep? Like if you're a real athlete and you're going to sleep with intense muscle soreness, like after a really tough training regimen, does that impact your capability of getting sleep even when you're trying your best? And are there any supplements or anything? Like I used to take GABA and casein protein before going to sleep. Do you ever recommend anything like that for your athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. I've steered away from casein with my athletes because it's a milk protein.
Mm-hmm.
And even for some of my athletes who don't have like any kind of dairy issues, it seems to bother their stomach.
Okay.
So we switched to a plant-based protein. So I steer away from that. And I actually learned how about casein when I started working with the allergy group, because we test for almost everything there, and casein is one of the things that we test for. Anyway, but yes, I do recommend protein, but like I said, steer away from the casein. In terms of like the soreness, so when you're sore, that's lactic acid. Okay. And so what happens is your muscles require oxygen in order to function properly. Okay. And so when you're overexerting yourself and your body can't keep up with the distribution of oxygen to the muscles, that's where lactic acid comes from. Because it's like, okay, I can't keep up with this. And so then it just releases this, this stuff that doesn't feel good. And so when we go to sleep that way, so if you're that sore when you go to bed, that lets me know that you're working out late in the evening. And we got to stop that. So a lot of my athletes, oh yeah, I go work at 11 p.m. Why? You practiced already today. Like you already did the damage. Your body's like, wait a minute, like you already did the damage. Why are we doing more? I need time to relax and recover. So if you're working, so sometimes, not all the time, but for the most part, that tells me that you're working out late in the evening. But if you're not and you're still that sore, this is where prioritizing your recovery comes into play. Okay. So we're replenishing that protein. Using a massage gun. I use what's called EMS, which is electrical muscle stimulation with my athletes. It's like little pods, that go on your legs or whatever part of the body. And it pretty much like it just like contracts. And what it's doing is it's causing like your blood vessels like to open up, close. And so it's actually applying more oxygen-rich blood, to the areas, that need recovery. Because the misconception is that you can actually, a lot of athletes think that you can increase the amount of oxygen, that gets into the blood cell, and that's false. You cannot do that. The blood cell can only hold so much oxygen, but you can increase the amount of oxygen-rich blood cells, which therefore increases volume and output. Okay, and so that's what these muscle stimulators do. I also use what's called like these massage boots for your legs. And so those are really, really, really helpful. There's a company that I use, it's called Reathlete. There's so many different ones out there. There's so many different companies. I can't even name them right now, but there's like Rapid Reboot. There's another popular one that's out there, but I use Reathlete. They're not as pricey, and they do the job. But to answer your question without going on this big long-winded thing, prioritizing your recovery is really, really important. So lactic acid. So my goal is to flush out as much lactic acid out of my athletes' bodies before they go to sleep, so then their body can go and transition into that reparative process earlier and sooner than going to sleep with it already in your system. Then your body's like, okay, I gotta get this out first, and then I can go into the repair process. So I'm trying to expedite that, before during sleep.
So do you think that's, and by the way, go on any tangent. I mean, I love listening to you speak. It's incredibly insightful, and I'm learning a lot. And before I forget, what was that thing you kept saying before about the eating thing? That what were you guys calling it?
Eating thing.
Ghrelin and leptin.
The hormones?
Yeah, no. What Rob just said. What is that? Can you say that again slower?
Ghrelin and leptin. They're two different. I'll throw it in the chat.
Okay.
So you guys can Google it. Yeah. Actually, I'll see if I can find a link. But by the way, I'm looking at the Sleep Foundation, and we always read studies, and we've read so many studies that we forget the old ones and stuff like this. But there's some pretty cool ones listed here on. I remember this one, a Stanford study of men's basketball players who extended their sleep. Okay.
No. Go ahead.
Dang it, I'm stealing your win.
No.
All right, I'll keep going. So, who extend their sleep to 10 hours a night found several positive outcomes. The players ran faster in both half-court and full-court sprints. Their shooting improved by at least 9%, both in free throws and three-point shots. The athletes also reported improved physical and mental well-being. And the list goes on and on. But
my expert panel yesterday. But yeah, so I wrote this data down. So they also did a study on their swim team. And so, like they had like their turnaround time increased by 0.1 second, which matters in that world. They increased their kick strokes by 5 kicks. That's huge. They were faster, 0.15 seconds, quicker off the block. And so like all these things are important. Like they're tennis players. That they had reactions to the ball, more power when they serve. So it's amazing all the different benefits that sleep has when you account for it and when you prioritize it. But it's still an uphill battle because it's hard trying to convince coaches and trainers to implement sleep as part of the training. So I always say that sleep is one of the missing pieces of the performance puzzle. Right. And so like when you take a step back and you look at what these athletes are doing, sleep, if it's a puzzle, sleep is always that missing piece. And so when you add that and you account for that matters. So I'll give you an example. And this isn't me saying that I was the sole reason why these athletes were able to do these things. But again, once they accounted for their sleep and recovery, it helped them. So like Kalia Copper, she plays for the Chicago Sky, the WNBA. They just won the championship. She's been in the league for 6 years and never made an all-star team. We started working earlier in the year. She made an all-star team, the MVP, of the finals of the championship game. My swimmer, Remedy Rule, she competed in the Olympics in Tokyo this year. Started working in November of last year, and she'd been trying, she tried twice to get to the Olympics, couldn't quite get there. Started working in November, and then she goes to the Olympics. And so like all these things matter. Again, I'm not the sole reason why, but I was just a missing piece of that performance puzzle that they accounted for and they prioritized and took serious. And they were able to boost themselves to the next level. It always goes to, I always ask my athletes, what are you willing to give to the process of being great? Because it's hard. The process is hard. Like if we can just hit an easy button and be great, like everybody on this planet, we'd all be the best versions of ourselves, but that's unrealistic. But also the beauty of it is that we're embarking on a journey that not everybody wants to, you know what I mean? And so when you do that, you have to make those certain sacrifices to the process in order to get where you want to be. And that process looks different to everybody because each level or step of the process requires more from you. So again, what are you willing to give? So are you willing to discontinue playing video games late at night, being on your phone late at night, going out and partying late at night, drinking, and partying late at night? Like none of that stuff is conducive, to what you're trying to get to athletically. And it is hard because you have to really, minimize a lot of different lifestyle choices. And it sucks, but it doesn't exist in athletics where you can apply the bare. It doesn't really. I'll say it. I'll keep it on sports, but where you can apply the bare minimum and evolve or ascend. It doesn't exist.
So one thing that I caught there that you said, and thank you for going into that, and let's go ahead and just give you credit for that those achievements. One thing that came to mind there was I feel like there's this idea in sports and in the military too, for sure, because, you know, a lot of veterans in the chat, is if you stop training and then go to sleep, there will be this feeling like, did you do everything you could do? But it sounds like what you're saying is by staying up and training round the clock, in fact, you didn't do everything you could do because you didn't sleep. And so
you're doing more harm than good.
You're doing more harm than good. So it's about kind of finding a balance of, and this is where coaching and training plans and organizational management come in, is being efficient. So it sounds like what you have to be is efficient, because you have to make time to sleep, which is not actively training, but the sleep is when the results of that training come to fruition. And is it possible, or is there anything to do with, if I train in a sport, if I train in a skill hard for continuously daily, is there part of the mental, the learning of the sport, the learning of the hand-eye coordination and the instincts to make certain moves, is that recovery happening during sleep too? Because you're fatiguing your brain. Like if I do something, I feel my brain get tired and I get slower and my reactions get slower. When I go to sleep the next time and get a good night's sleep, am I resting that part of myself too?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we sleep, our brain does this thing where it consolidates, short-term and long-term memory. And so when the theory is that that's what our brains are doing when we dream. So like, really, I mean, there's really no concrete, like the top expert in the world, can't come out and say, I know exactly why we sleep. I know exactly why we dream. They're all theories. Now we know, what the benefits are when we do it. But is that the reason why we do it? We don't know. But one of the things that happens is that when you're learning a new skill, when you're learning a new movement, a new, like footwork, whatever your respective sport is, when you sleep, your brain takes that information and it categorizes it, okay, and it saves it. So really, if you think about it, our brain's going through this process of deleting and saving information, and we have no control over it. But somehow it knows, okay, when Rob learned how to clean his gun, right? It saved that information back there, so then the next day, he had better recall and can better execute that process. And so that's what happens in sports or with athletics or whatever we're doing. Even for non-athletes, when you're learning a new skill, when you're learning something new, our brains know that, and it kind of keeps that. When people say, "Oh man, like yeah, it was in the back of my head," like that term. Well, what happens is it's kind of what it's doing. Like it's saying, okay, like you learn this new skill or this new movement or this new process. Okay, well, you're going to need to be able to recall that and execute that tomorrow. So we're going to save that. And so then that's how the next day, sometimes you're like, oh man, like I'm surprised I remember how to do that. That's your brain did that.
So is there sorry, Rob, you have anything to go with there?
Yeah, you're making me think of, the cleaning the gun. And I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep cleaning a gun. But I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And I know you're going to probably clown me for it, Max, but yes, with a dip in the mouth, trying to stay awake. Can't do it, man. You just CLP and, anyways, what you were making me think of, Thomas, was, I just remember, so, I've seen the studies talking about things as fine-tuned as, like the violin or fencing or martial arts. They have a lot of studies on martial arts and stuff, and learning those skills and not being able to learn them until that memory consolidation during sleep. But on the flip side of that, one of the number one things that we do, actually the number one directive in the SEAL teams, is direct action. So direct action, think of it kind of like SWAT, like you're kicking open the door and clearing a room. So we have these pretty legit kill houses. And I think most military folks, I wouldn't know, but I think most military folks have seen or been exposed to kill houses. They're kind of like a mock-up of a type of building. And so like if you're getting deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq, they're not going to be exactly like a United States style building where we have building codes. But anyway, so, we call it CQC. When I went through, it was called close quarters combat. And I just remember, you punch through the door, depending on what position you are in the stack depends on. And Max, I know you know what I'm talking about. You got the same training, but you're kicking open the door, depending on what number you are on the stack, what side of the door you are, how does the door open, left or right? You're thinking about all these things. And I was never like the best SEAL. I'll tell you guys that right now. I mean, I struggled with everything, but you just have to keep trying. You have to keep trying. And I just remember, finger off the trigger, break the threshold, get to your corner and start scanning when you're engaging with the, intent to potentially, engage, then your finger can go on the trigger kind of thing. But does the finger go on the trigger now, or, and then don't oversweep your buddy, and, all these different mechanisms. And I just remember being in training, and in training, they never let you get enough sleep. And so I'm doing house runs, and I'm so tired, and there's nothing more than I want than just have a perfect run. I want to be the best guy through the door. I want to be perfect every time, but it's like impossible. It's like when you're sleep deprived and you're just trying to catch up with your brain and your fatigue because they're making you do shuttle runs up the damn mountain. You're going in the door, and it is like infinitely harder to learn those skills and to perfect those, the minutia. And so then, like you leave whatever training ground you're at, and you finally get some good sleep. And then it's like everything is way easier. You're like, oh man, I can't believe I sucked so bad this last week. But I think a lot of that's sleep deprivation. And so maybe the solution is just, years of experience, just building that muscle memory when you do have a good opportunity to sleep. But I just recall not being able to pick up the skills while I was sleep deprived. So
yeah, and that's a big thing, because I did a talk for a fire department locally, and one of the things that I had on the slide was some of the causes of sleep deprivation more, and I geared that presentation more towards their profession and their world, but as a whole, it causes what we call deviation from protocol, and so and you don't know what you're doing it when you're sleep deprived. Well, when you're sleep deprived, like your body just wants to go with what's easiest just to get it done, and sometimes what's easiest isn't the right thing, but you're tired and you're just like, I don't give a shit, I just want to get this over with and just keep it moving, and in certain professions like yours in the military, or like police and fire, that can get you killed, you know what I mean, and or someone else, and so that's why it's really important to prioritize yourself and your health, in your sleep, so then your reaction times are better, all these different things. And what's really scary though, what's scary is that I was telling the firefighters that more than 60% of on-duty fatalities are due to sleep deprivation, motor vehicle accidents, and heart attacks.
Wow.
And like their jaws dropped when I said that. And I'm like, yeah, that's because sleep deprivation. You have what's called adrenal fatigue. Like you're up, and then the call's over, then you're back to the firehouse, then you're down, then you're up again, and then you're down, and you're up again. So like, military personnel, they actually go through what's called adrenal fatigue as well. You know what I mean? Because let's say you're overseas and you get attacked. Okay, cool. The enemy's dead. And you're just kind of chilling, and your brain coming down. And then it happens again. And it happens again. And then it happens again. Like you're constantly, like you say, keyed up. You're constantly on. And that really affects your body. Your body isn't supposed to go through, have adrenaline pumping through like that, up and down, up and down, because it elevates your heart rate and increases your chance of heart disease. So it's really, really important. So here's another fact I'll give you. So with first responders, whether they're firefighters, police officers, whatever, the average length of life post-retirement is 65 years. So at 65 years old, they're broken. They're kicking the bucket, because of that constant sleep deprivation, working these crazy shifts, mental health, and all these different things. I mean, it's amazing what these first responders have to walk into sometimes and deal with, burnt bodies, dead bodies, all these different things. And then they have to try to go home, to their families and be normal. And it's just unrealistic for some.
There's a comment in here right now from Justin, just popped up. It said the majority of death in naval aviation comes from the drive home after a night mission. That is the dip in adrenaline, the accumulated fatigue. You know, that's another aspect of it too, is when you come down, you know, like you were just describing too, from an intense moment is really hard on the body too. And all of this stuff sounds very scary. We're talking about heart disease. We're talking about shorter life expectancy. I believe I've heard that even brain disease like Alzheimer's can be linked to not enough sleep, or is as a risk factor, not enough sleep. Dementia, Parkinson's, like all these other things can be linked to poor sleep. But there's the things that we can do too, right? And that's part of what we're talking about here is the ways to improve. What is a way forward for people? And we've talked about this on the show before too, because to some extent, what choice do people who choose to go into these most critical jobs have other than to be sleep deprived? So if you're a first responder and you're in life and death situations constantly and you need to kind of stay awake, or you're military, you need to kind of stay awake, and you're doing room clearance in real life and, you know, for the third day in a row or whatever, and so you need to stay awake. When is the right time to catch up? I know there's not like such a thing as catching up on sleep, but when you start to notice this accumulated fatigue and you're starting to fail at things, I don't know. I mean, should we speak up? Should people be considering speaking up more and saying, hey, we need a break? Should leaders be more aware of this? Like, what are some ways ahead on this issue? Is anything being done on a large scale? Is anybody out there talking about this, going to corporations, going to cities and kind of preaching this cause?
There's people that I know, you know, in the field. They're not sleep coaches, but they work in the sleep field. You know, and they're hard charging like crazy, but it's such an uphill battle. Because even still now in 2021, and actually it's actually been more uncovered now than ever because of COVID, what we call COVID insomnia. But even now it's still an uphill battle because as a society, you know, we've always viewed since the digital age, you know, we've always viewed sleep as an indulgence, you know, or as a weakness, you know, and that's happened a lot in the military, but when really it's a requirement. You know, and to your point really quick about that, what that guy said just now about, you know, driving home after, you know, anytime your body thinks it has a chance, you know, to relax and get sleep, it's going to take it. And it doesn't care what you're doing, whether you're driving, you know, it just doesn't matter what you're doing, you know, it'll take that opportunity. But in terms of what can be done, a lot of things are being done, but really it comes down to education and training. You know, like people need to be educated and trained on the dangers of, I mean, the benefits, but also the dangers of sleep deprivation, you know, sleep apnea, you know, all these different things, whether it's on their soldiers, their employees, you know, what have you, and really dive deep, you know, and not get too sciencey because then you'll lose them, but just enough so that they understand exactly how and why it works. That's what's really important to me. So that's how I operate with my clients. I want you to know, how and why this directly impacts your personal performance, your athletic, your mental, your physical performance. Not just one of those, well, I'm the expert, you just listen to it because I said so. No, I want you to know exactly why. So then when you start seeing these what I call micro wins, you know, or the benefits, then you know, oh, okay, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is a thing. Really trying to convince people that you know, prioritizing your sleep is a real thing, and that to your point, you're robbing from that sleep bank. So again, when I work third shift, I mean, if you think about it, I work from 7P to 7A. Okay. Well, it's not like I just woke up at 7P and I was already at work. You know what I mean? Like I had to, you know, I got up at 5:45 p.m., you know, get in the shower, you know, get ready. You know, my wife would have dinner ready, so she's packing that up for me. I get to the sleep lab, you know, and I'm there, and by the time I get home, you know, it's about 8:30. You know what I mean? And so then I have to, so I'm up for more than 12 hours, you know. So I go to work that night, and then when I leave there in the morning, I'm back there again that same day. So I have to get as much recovery sleep in between that time as I can. So if you think about it, I'm awake more than I am asleep. So let's say I do 3 12s. Those 3 12s, I've been awake more than I've been asleep in those 3 days. That's part of the problem. And that's why, like, the physician suicide rate is high. One of the reasons why the nursing suicide rate is high, because they get burnt out, and that's how mistakes are made, is when you're sleep deprived. So it's definitely it's an issue. The
Yeah.
public health issue.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think we could probably make a episode next month on the public health crisis of sleep. Maybe should be the topic. But
Let's do it.
That's a shout out to first responders, critical care workers, doctors and nurses, and everybody military who are putting their well-being on hold for the greater good that we believe in as the mission that we've chosen to take on. It's just unfortunate that a lot of times you don't notice the damage being done until long after the mission is over. And then you go, wow, I really messed myself up. Wish I didn't. Like that whole, I'll deal with it when I'm older, c'est la vie. When older becomes a thing, you're like, damn, that was stupid. I wish I didn't eat all that hazmat. I wish I didn't, do all these dumb things, eat this way, drink all that booze and all this stuff. Damn, would have been cool if I didn't do that. So that's always my message out to younger people is like, older comes sooner than you think. I have a question though about the fitness side of this too. This is one that's been bugging me and I want to get to it before time's up. So I'm going to kind of pivot here a little bit. And my question is this, and I feel like, talking about getting older a little bit and when things start to catch up with you, I'm only 36. I don't feel old. I don't feel different than when I was 25 or anything. But one thing that I do notice, and it's kind of always been this way, this isn't new with age, but I know this does affect older people, gentlemen especially. If I am taking supplements, if I take a protein shake at night or something like that, or take some of my vitamins at night or drink maybe even just a glass of water before going to sleep, I'll wake up having to pee. Like I'll wake up at night and I got to go to the bathroom. Like, oh, I drank a protein shake at night with a vitamin or whatever. I'm definitely going to wake up to pee. Obviously it's interrupting my sleep. I'm getting up. Is waking up to pee, this seems like detrimental to sleep. Is this a known thing? Does anybody talk about this?
Yeah, and so that's why, in my the routines and stuff that I develop, the programs that I develop for my clients, I always have no liquids at least 1 to 2 hours before bed. Now the protein 1 hour before bed, for some reason with my clients doesn't impact them at all.
Okay,
it doesn't do anything to them. But no juices, no milks, no waters, stuff like that. At least an hour before bed, to help prevent your body from having to get up, do all these things. Because your body has to process this stuff, okay, at night, and so that's the process during the night that's not supposed to be active. And so when you do those things, it actually deprives you from reaching those deeper restorative stages of sleep. But you wake up and you still feel like shit, because you didn't get the transition into stage 3, you didn't get the transition into REM, because your body's too busy trying to process this stuff that you put in it so late, that it can't do that. So that's why it's important to really understand and really know, the do's and don'ts and really how to navigate that.
It's really difficult to find the balance because I find myself, maybe this is, I'll just, I like to just talk about what I'm thinking because I feel like, I can't be the only one thinking this. Some people will be able to relate to this. I find myself going, okay, tomorrow I'm going for a 5-mile run in the morning. I need to hydrate. And so I can't stop drinking water at 7 o'clock or whatever, because then I'll be dehydrated. And but then if I drink, 3 glasses of water between 7 and 9 PM, I'm probably going to have to pee at night. So I find myself like, damn, what do I do? And I don't know that, I'm not saying that I want you to give me the answer right now, unless you have tips. Like you said, stop drinking water 2 hours before sleep. But if I plan on waking up and going for a big cardiovascular workout, I want to be hydrated. I don't know. Maybe Rob, you have something here too, because I want to get a good night's sleep too. But this is like the line that we're walking all the time. I feel like activity is good and it's healthy, and we know that it's important for our lifestyle and our well-being and all this stuff. But there's a whole other side to it that's doing tons of damage as well. And it's like, when is the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how do you make those things come out positive for you?
Well, your run's gonna suck, so that's kind of the balance where, okay, I stopped drinking water, but I have to be hydrated for the next day. And if I hydrate, I'm gonna be up going to the bathroom, but Sarah's gonna affect my sleep. So then when you go run the next day, it's gonna suck, because your body wasn't put in a position to where it can recover and repair and prepare you for what you're gonna do to it. So you have to find that balance.
Rob, you got anything here? What do you think about all this? You must have been through this stuff before.
Yeah, I just think, as long as you're getting some sodium and potassium which you're probably going to get through your nutrition. But as long as you're getting those things, then you should still be able to cut off water in enough time not to, have to pee all the time at night and still be hydrated the next day. But I remember those 4 a.m., boots and utes runs, just have that canteen. It's okay to drink water while you run too,
Yeah. Yeah. And in those cases, you can just go pee while you're running too. Who cares?
It's cool to pee in buds.
So we're coming up on the top of the hour here, Thomas. What do you say for athletes out there wondering where all this fits in to their scheduling and their plan? Prioritizing sleep, how important is it? What tips do you have? What are some things you tell your athletes that you think everybody out there can improve on?
Definitely develop a routine, what we call sleep hygiene. Develop a routine, create triggers that your body and your brain can recognize leading up to bed. So therefore the transition into relaxation and sleep is a lot easier. Have a 30-minute window, what I call a 30-minute wind down period, where there's no electronics, no TV, no tablets, computers, or whatever. You find something relaxing to do within that 30 minutes. And in the last 5 to 10 minutes of that downtime, it's finished off in the sleep environment, in the bedroom. Again, creating a trigger. If you wear pajamas, whatever you wear, wear for bed, don't change into those things until you get into the sleep environment. So it's a trigger. Oh, okay. Well, when Max puts this on, he goes here. Or maybe Max doesn't wear anything. When Max takes this off, he goes here. It's a trigger, and so your brain recognizes these things. And so it's really, really important. Again, that's conditioning. That's environmental conditioning. That's body conditioning. So those are just some easy tips that you can do. Set bedtime, set wake up time. That's tweaking that alone makes a difference.
I do a good job. We do have during the week at the very least, we have a bedtime, we have a wake up time. We're pretty good usually. I think that we're doing good on that. There's a lot of room to improve though for me. I'm hoping that when I get that rest node, when that product's ready, it'll be something to improve both mine and my wife's sleep schedule. My wife's a physician. She works insane hours. She's the part of her schedule and the reason why we're going to be up, all next week. And she's also on call next week too. So it's just like, it's kind of unbelievable what she puts herself through sleep wise. Wow. It's very, very difficult. I see it, every day. A lot of naps when the opportunity comes available. So, yes. So thank you for bringing that stuff up too. And thank you for being part of the healthcare system as well, Thomas.
Thank you.
Appreciate your efforts there. And you're helping people and athletes and everyone perform their best. So that means a lot. I know you were into some intense stuff today before the show started. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Military, I work with military personnel as well. I have some military personnel that a few therapists that I connected with, they refer my way as well. So, and it's really interesting, getting to be a part of their story and their journey, because I've heard some pretty crazy stuff, which is how they end up to me. So, yeah.
Rob, do you have any final thoughts here before we get ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I wanted to tell everybody that we are making a short documentary. So yes. I think we're going to actually release the documentary before the next time we have our show, Max. So great. Like if we do another show with the three of us or whoever you choose in a month, I think we may already release the documentary before then. We're aiming for Veterans Day, and it's going to be a short documentary about the social problem that we're all dealing with in the world right now of sleep, the sleep epidemic, which a lot of people are struggling. They just don't know everybody else is struggling. But we're going to have a specific focus on veterans and what the mission is that we've been working on for so long and what we're doing about it. So anyways, just wanted to tell you guys that, expect that's coming out. So
awesome. Thank you very much. That's going to be, I love Veterans Day. First episode of ScuttleButt show ever was on Veterans Day back in that shady radio station in San Diego. So, and Thomas, you got anything before we go?
No, I think that's really cool what Rob said, because we were talking about it. He goes, "Hey, Thomas." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to be on TV?" And I was just like, "Yeah, okay."
That's awesome.
Love it. But yeah, so for the people that are here tonight watching this, prioritize yourselves, prioritize your bodies, prioritize your recovery through sleep, and you'll feel a lot better.
I agree with all of that. Thank you for answering my questions as the lay person in the room on the subject. I learned a lot. I always do. And yeah, we'll be back. I mean, Thomas, you're invited back, of course, next month.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I would love to do that and talk about the public health issue of sleep and how it's affecting people nationwide. And I learned, you said COVID insomnia. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
We can talk more about that and how it's affecting people and all of that. And so that sounds like a great plan. Rob, what do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. That sounds awesome. Okay, cool. So with all that being said, I want to thank Rob and Thomas for being here today. What an awesome episode. I want to thank everybody in the chat for posing questions and Rob taking most of them in the chat. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the ScuttleButt Show. We will be back next week, or I guess Sunday night, 1800 Pacific Standard Time, with a brand new regularly scheduled episode of the show. And with all that being said, I look forward to talking to you all very soon. But for now, that's the ScuttleButt.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.